A few weeks ago, I told you guys that I had asked Mike Norvell if he was using the snub as any kind of motivation, and he pretty clearly told me no. Like, I'm focused on this team. We're focused on getting better. Some of the guys weren't even here. If you're letting outside factors motivate you, then you need to be self-motivated. All those things, right? All those kind of coach speak things, but I truly do believe him. I don't think he's in those meeting rooms using the snub as motivation. But I was excited for this week because I wanted to talk to the players about that. I wanted to ask the guys in kind of an intimate, private setting about their thoughts about it. And so we got a chance to do that in Charlotte. And I'm going to play a couple of clips from both Josh Farmer and Pat Payton to kind of give you some of their thoughts. So let's jump right into it. Josh Farmer from the podium said that he was still pissed off. I was a little surprised that he said that in front of everybody, but I'm glad that he did. They're emotional about it still, and as you'll see when we dug a little bit deeper, they certainly have not let that go. Now, how is each player using that for motivation? Josh had a different take than Pat did. Pat said something that completely blew my mind that I would have never expected, and then Norvell kind of had a funny response when somebody asked him. So let's jump right into it. Let me show you, first of all, the Josh Farmer reply when he was asked, and we kind of dove into it there.
For them was different for you guys. You had a great season last year.
Because we kind of pissed off, man. Because I think we deserve to be in the playoffs, and they didn't put us in there.
I was gonna say, how long did it take for you personally, emotionally, to kind of just get over that?
I mean, I'm still not over it. We're gonna be 50 years old thinking about we could have won the national championship, and there's nothing we could do. We didn't pick that. It's cool.
Apologize for the shaky camera work there. That was off of my iPhone. But yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by this. Or maybe I'm not surprised by this, but I appreciate his honesty. I appreciate how open he is. But I've talked about still being upset about this, and I've apologized for talking about it again. And every time I do, you guys always comment like, no big deal. We are still upset, and we're still glad that you're talking about it too, because we got screwed. But he went a step further than that. He didn't just say like, I'm still talking about it 6-8 months later. He literally just said, I'm going to be 50 thinking about this. I'm going to be an old man. I'm going to be well into, my after football career and still be thinking about this. I think that probably puts it in a little bit more perspective than any of us really realize. See, we were upset, and we've all said, man, I'll never forget about this. But we will, right? Like, time will go on, and you'll let things go, right? But for the guys that it actually happened to, for the guys that actually got screwed over, I mean, as a fan base, I'd say we got screwed over, right? Like, that stinks. Our fan base didn't get to experience something really, really cool. But, like, we didn't earn the playoffs. We didn't earn a trip to go and compete for a national championship. We didn't bust our you-know-whats out there on Saturday night in Charlotte to be able to make it there like those guys did. And then to have it ripped away the next day certainly has a massive impact and kind of a lasting impact on some of our players. Now, this one was really good. I want you to listen to what Pat Payton said when he was asked about it, and see if you catch the point that really stood out to me.
On the podium a bit ago, Josh talked about being pissed about the playoffs, and that was, I think, the word he used. How much this offseason, I mean, is that something you have conversations about as a team? Is it something you try not to talk about? How do you approach that?
I feel like when it comes to not trying to talk about it, it's really not trying to talk about it because guys who came in, like the transfers and young guys, they always talk about, like, I wish we gonna help y'all boys get back to that this year. We gonna give us all our want. So we gonna talk about it because the guys who came in, they want us to get our revenge. They want us to go be able to experience that again because we know that how that was, how they took it away from us. But the biggest thing I was telling somebody earlier really is just gonna be like when I'm older, like 50, 40, we gonna always remember like I went 13-0, and I didn't go to the playoffs. That's really gonna be the biggest thing when it comes to it. We gonna always remember.
An interesting take there. He obviously projected way out into the future, and he said, yeah, when I'm 50, 40, when I'm older, I'm going to remember that. Like, I'm going to, it's still going to hurt then. Because, again, as fans, we didn't earn it. Those guys earned it with their play. But my thought, and what really stood out to me there, was him talking about the guys who came in this year, who weren't impacted by this. Now, guys that either loved Florida State because they were being recruited by FSU and wanted to be here, or guys that transferred in and quickly fell in love with Florida State when being recruited. If you remember, if they're a transfer, they were being recruited while we were all in pain over the snub. All the transfers committed in mid to late December and then early January, a time where we all still felt really raw emotionally. The staff felt really raw emotionally. Guys that were around campus felt really raw emotionally coming off of that. And those guys that made it to campus early, right, early enrollees, and the transfers that were on campus pretty quickly as well, Pat talked about them. And I never really thought about this, but for all the questions around FSU's culture and all the questions around, man, the opt-out to the bowl game, Pat says that, like, the guys don't even really bring it up, but the guys who are bringing it up are the ones that weren't even impacted by it, weren't on the roster last year. Transfers, new freshmen, whatever it might be, those guys are the ones that seem to bring it up the most and the ones who seem to be motivated by it the most. I think Pat understands and Josh understands, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I think guys that are on this team understand, like, hey, we're going to be really good again, and we're going to have a chance to go out and compete for a playoff spot again. Vegas thinks that. The national media thinks that. Everybody with a second brain cell understands that. And so I think Josh and Pat understand that they're going to get this chance, but they're new brothers, right? Whether that be, again, portal, recruits, whatever, they're the ones that are pissed off. And they're the ones that are like, hey, we're going to go get this for you because you got wrong last year. What a testament to the culture that people have so many questions about at Florida State. Now, Norvell was asked about this in a side room. And I don't have video of this one because I had asked him a question right before, and I got a call and stopped after my question was done. But I want to tell you what Norvell said. But first, if you're watching this, if you could do me a quick favor, hit the subscribe button. We've certainly tried to bring you as much content from ACC Kickoff as we can. We've got a ton more coming, more conversations like this, more chats that I want to have about them. But do me a favor and just hit that button really, really quick. All right. So Norvell was asked about what it was like to have the support of so many after the snub. And the direct quote that he was asked, and you can find this video different places, I just didn't grab it to play because I didn't take the video. But he was asked, what did it feel like to have basically everybody realizing that you guys were wronged and that you guys got left out? And he's usually really, really serious in the interviews, but he paused quickly and he said, well, not everyone thought that we should have been in there. And of course, everyone busts out laughing. There's probably 8 or 12 people around him. The interviewer goes blush red, and it was good. It was a pretty, a serious topic, a frustrating topic. I'm sure Norvell's tired of talking about it, not only because he wants to move on, but also because it's a frustrating thing to bring up. But was able to add a little bit of, laughter to it, joke about it just a little bit more. He did go a little bit deeper into it with David Hale. He was asked about Greg Sankey's comments that UGA was a top 4 team that didn't make the playoff. And here's what he said back. He said, I don't disagree that Georgia was one of the top 4 teams if you're judging off of talent and ability, but they also earned their loss. That was part of the result of what happened on the field. When you look at our team and what it was, we controlled the things that we could control. We unfortunately had an injury that we responded to it, and everybody can have opinion of what happened. I don't disagree that they were one of the best 4 teams, but what happened on the field kept them out of the playoff. And I appreciate David Hale for the tweet and the question. I mean, we've talked about this. I don't necessarily disagree. I mean, I think if you put Georgia in as the 4 seed, which I don't necessarily know that you should do because, again, they lost a game. I mean, I think they go out and beat Michigan in the first round, and then I think they win the national championship too. That was a classic setup where losing that one game to Alabama was probably going to refocus them and get them to win 2 more games to win it all. I don't think anybody would doubt that Georgia was probably still the most talented team, still the best team. And so if you were going to leave Florida State out because you didn't think they were one of the 4 best teams, it wasn't about earning it. It was about being one of the 4 best teams. You should have put Georgia in. And, I mean, Norvell's right here. What kept Georgia out of the playoff was the fact that they lost the game. Unfortunately, that didn't seem to matter when you got down to 3 and 4 with Texas and Alabama. It was just inconsistent. We've talked about that before. I don't necessarily have to go super deep on that. But not only was the committee inconsistent with number 4 and 5, the committee was inconsistent when it came to another undefeated team and another team that had won a lot of big games. The American conference director, Mr. Pernetti, was asked about Liberty getting the group of 5 New Year's Six spot over SMU last year. Liberty went undefeated. As a Liberty alum, I was happy that they were in. But SMU played a much tougher schedule. SMU won their conference championship against a ranked team in Tulane. He said, what happened from our perspective speaks for itself. You have an institution in SMU that had the guts to go out there and schedule and compete. Now, I don't care if you think that Liberty should have been in or SMU should have been in, but we again have a situation where the committee used alternate logic, right? With Florida State, they're not one of the 4 best. They're not a team that we think could compete. And so a team that played a tougher schedule or a team that we think is better right now, we're going to put in. But we didn't do that with Georgia. We didn't do that with SMU getting in over Liberty, though SMU would have crushed Liberty at full strength. And I say that as a Liberty fan, as somebody who graduated from there. I'm glad they made the New Year's Six. I didn't like the result of that Oregon Bowl game. But all of this said to say, like, what if all of this is maybe causing a bit of a change? Now, an undefeated team is going to get in no matter what this year, right? Like that, we understand that that's the case. However, what's it going to look like when Florida State's 11-1 or Florida State's 11-2, and there's an SEC team sitting there at 9-3, or there's an SEC team sitting there with one less loss? Or one more loss, and one less win. Are we back in the same spot that we were in last year? Florida State goes 12-1, and that doesn't include a conference championship win. So you go 12-0 and losing the conference championship. And then there's an SEC team that's got 1 or 2 more losses than you. Do they get jumped ahead because you think they're better? I know we're not going to get left out at 13-0, but do you know how many teams have gone 13-0 2 years in a row? Did it in 13 and 14, but it's pretty rare. I mean, the University of Florida doesn't have 1 undefeated season, let alone 2 back-to-back. And so to think that, we'll just go 13-0 and get in, that's going to be pretty tough to do. Not to say we can't. But what's interesting to me is when we go 11-2 this year, right? And say that 11-2 doesn't come with a conference championship. If you get a conference championship, you're in. But we go 11-2 this year. That's a pretty strong record, right? You better hope there aren't a lot of 10-3 SEC teams. You better hope that there's not a 10-2 SEC team right there behind you. And you better hope that that's not what it comes down to. Because if it is, I think you're going to get screwed again. And that's not me trying to be negative when we're in July and we're not even close to the season starting yet. We're still a little over a month away. Actually, a month from today, now that I think about it. But I do think it's a warning. I think Norvell is still trying to craft that narrative a little bit of like, don't do this to us again. Then we go 13-0, we put ourselves in that position. Yeah, that's we're in. But when we go 10-2 and there's an SEC team behind us that's 9-3, and you think that their schedule's tougher, so you put them in, we could be in the same situation that we're in now. And thus the issue and why Florida State's trying to get out of the conference. It is not only money, it's certainly a lack of respect. We'll see. What are your thoughts? I thought it was interesting from the guys. I thought some of the commentary around the snubs, however you want to look at it, with Georgia, Florida State, SMU, Liberty were interesting. And are there changes? Are things adjusted next year? Again, if I'm not in the SEC or the Big Ten, maybe Notre Dame's brand, I'm pretty worried about what that looks like and trying to get in without being a conference champ. Not saying it's impossible. You go 12-1, I think you're in. I don't think there'd be any way they'd leave you out there. If you go 11-2, there's a 10-win SEC team sitting there, and I don't know, man. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let's talk about it a little bit. Probably my biggest takeaway, again, being that the new guys are the ones that want to go out and win it and get the revenge for Florida State's returners probably more than anything. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Go Noles.